shakeup of the cabinet at Queen's Park.
We made some changes, as you saw, to make sure that we have the right people in the right place.
Premier Ford shuffles 2/3 of his cabinet, demoting some of his top ministers. Plus,
joined tonight by his father and his mother, R.J. Barrett.
Mississauga's R.J. Barrett is picked 3rd overall in the NBA draft. And a starry night in Toronto's Gay Village, the rain not keeping people away to kick off the final weekend of Pride and raise money for the 519. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. A major shakeup in the government benches at Queen's Park tonight. Premier Ford demoting or reassigning many of his top ministers while inviting 7 new backbenchers to the cabinet table. As Chris Glover reports, to call this merely a cabinet shuffle is a bit of an understatement.
Why do you feel like this happened?
The silence from Doug Ford's demoted cabinet ministers spoke volumes, especially from turfed finance minister Vic Fedeli.
Minister Fedeli, how do you feel about being demoted from finance?
Not in recent memory has a Canadian finance minister been fired in the first year.
I want to address Vic Fedeli. He did an incredible job.
Premier Doug Ford tried to put a positive spin on Fedeli's demotion to economic development.
There's no better salesperson in our team than Vic Fedeli.
Also on the chopping block, the education minister, after months of protest. On everything from sex ed to job cuts to class changes, Lisa Thompson is now in charge of consumer services. Family Services Minister Lisa MacLeod is demoted to tourism.
You're too afraid to face us because you're failing kids across the province.
Who can forget the deafening screams she faced from parents of kids with autism over funding changes that have since been shelved.
You can't communicate these kinds of cuts in a positive way because they hurt families and everybody knows it.
The Honourable Doug Ford.
Boy!
Ford's campaign to cut spending has meant slumping poll numbers and disastrous public appearances.
Million of our fans right here in Ontario.
His inner circle, now up 7 people, is therefore more expensive.
We're still in line, if not smaller than a previous government, and we have a lot of heavy lifting to do.
But the issue isn't the team, it's the premier, says this political observer.
You know, you can play musical chair with members of your caucus, but the fact of the matter is the premier is still premier, and Mr. Ford himself is pretty unpopular with Ontarians right now.
Still several fresh faces in cabinet now.
Stephen Francis Lecce.
Lecce takes over the volatile portfolio of education with teacher contract negotiations on the horizon. Still learning the ropes, many of these rookie ministers have their work cut out for them. Today, Doug Ford also applauded all of those ministers he demoted, and he said he still has 100% confidence in them. And it's important to note that Ford this upcoming weekend is going to be throwing his annual barbecue Ford Fest, and we know that thousands of people go to that every single year, so you will see that he also still has quite a bit of support despite all of this. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, so many names changing positions. Here are some more highlights. Former Attorney General Carolyn Mulroney moves to Transportation, a ministry that will be responsible for the subway upload in our city. Doug Downey steps in as Attorney General. Jeff Urich will move from Transportation to the Environment portfolio. Now, while there were many changes, the Municipal Affairs Minister, Steve Clark, is staying put. His file included budget cuts to local governments, including cuts to public health and slashing Toronto City Council in half. But despite all that backlash, Clark will continue to oversee municipal affairs. Well, Toronto's Pride weekend is kicking off in high fashion this evening. Despite the rain, hundreds coming out for day 1 of the Green Space Festival. That's an annual fundraiser for the 519, the country's largest LGBT community center. Kelda Yun reports.
The rain may have been a bit of a drag, but with these queens lighting up the stage, everyone was in high spirits as Pride celebrations kicked off.
It's the 519's biggest fundraiser of the year, and we're here to party for a cause.
This is just the first of 4 days of festivities to support the 519. All of the money raised will go toward the organization's services and programs. Services that helped Ivana Ortegoza 20 years ago. She left Venezuela out of fear for her life.
When you come here without nothing. I was a refugee, and that center was the only place for trans people.
She now works for the center, helping other trans people of color.
Because even at this time, 1990, 2019, some people up there, it's like they really hate you. They can't see you, so they try to put you down and call you a man and stuff like that, or why you come to this country.
The 519 serves more than 25,000 people every year, over 2,000 of them refugees.
Today, especially with it being World Refugee Day, we're really bringing a focus to that. We recently suffered some pretty significant provincial cuts to our program, as well as the cuts that have happened to legal aid for refugees. And so we're here really counting on folks to come out, have a great time, and help us raise some funds so that we can support LGBTQ refugees.
Trans lives matter. Come on, Toronto. I want to hear you say it.
Also among those in attendance today, a trailblazer for LGBT rights, former MPP Reverend Sherry DeNovo, pictured here at the first ever Toronto Pride Parade back in 1971.
519 is our hub, but also we're an anomaly in Canada because there are only, I think, 28 countries in the world that have equal marriage. There are about 10 countries where it's still a death penalty, and everybody else, there's not equal rights. So there's a whole lot of work to do internationally, including welcoming refugees, but more to the point, to work in those countries where it's still illegal.
Last year's festivities raised $500,000. It's hoped that amount will be matched this year. Kelda Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
If you were outside tonight, you know how hard the rain was coming down. This is a look at Lakeshore Boulevard at Ontario Drive. Police closing Lakeshore from Ontario to Strawn because of some of this localized flooding you see there. Colette Kennedy's here with a first look at the forecast. We're about 12 hours away from the official start of summer, and it's drier weather, I'm hoping.
Yeah, it's coming in here. It's looking really good for our first weekend of summer we'll be experiencing, and you're quite right. 11:54 a.m. tomorrow, summer begins for us, and we do have a clearing trend overnight tonight, so it sets us up for a nice day with sunshine for Friday, and the weekend ahead as well. Yeah, you can get the grill out, whatever it is you might want to do, because we'll have the drier conditions. So not only the showers pulling away, but the cloud cover as well as high pressure digs in. With it, we get into much quieter conditions. We're not looking at active weather, and we're looking at those dry conditions, and it sticks around. This dome of high pressure, pretty large and extensive and slow moving, which is nice. So it sticks around for a little bit, and that's why we're kind of protected into the weekend. Overnight tonight, with that trend of the clouds moving out of here, the winds, though, turning towards the north to northwest. So that's the only thing I'll mention is that tomorrow those winds will be a little gusty at times. So hopefully we'll get to 23 degrees. Might be close, 22, 23, but it'll feel a little bit cooler with that breeze. But you're going to enjoy that sunshine, Mike.
Absolutely. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Well, a big night for Mississauga's RJ Barrett. The New York Knicks picking him third in tonight's NBA draft.
The New York Knicks select RJ Barrett from Toronto and Duke University.
Oh, the 6'7" Barrett was the highest-ranked Canadian in tonight's draft. Spike Lee was certainly thrilled to have him in the Knicks. Canada could match or set the record for most players picked from a country outside the U.S. in a single draft tonight. So far, 4 Canadians have been selected, including Toronto's Nickeil Alexander-Walker here. He went to the Brooklyn Nets at 17. And Vancouver-born Brandon Clark went at 21 to Oklahoma City. The Raptors, incidentally, won't pick until the second-to-last spot. Well, finding a parking spot in the city can be challenging, but a new study suggests we could find some relief by overhauling the minimum parking requirements for new buildings and by no longer building underground lots. Our City Hall reporter Lauren Pelly explains.
If you want to park here, you've got to go up.
The best thing about above ground is you avoid digging deeper.
This Ryerson professor says Toronto needs more above ground lots like this one near the Eaton Centre.
You can repurpose redundant parking space if it's above ground in the future, but the choices to repurpose an underground parking lot are very limited.
He's making the recommendation because people are driving less thanks to the rise of ride-hailing apps. And down the road, there might also be totally autonomous cars that can park on their own in tighter spaces.
Another reason is the cost comparison between building parking lots up in the sky and way down under the ground.
Building lots above ground is less expensive and part of the regular construction costs. Plus, the spaces can later be used for something different. But underground, lot construction in pricey neighborhoods can cost $80,000 to $100,000 for each parking space. So if you build 100 spaces, that could cost at least $8 million.
It's a win-win because the underground parking spots will remain underground. There's not much utility for them, unless you want to use them to hold water in case of flooding. But that's
about it.
That's about it.
Some say the city also needs to overhaul its minimum parking regulations, which require close to one space for every unit in an apartment building.
There's Toronto near transit and there's Toronto far away from transit. Toronto far away from transit probably needs more parking spaces right now.
This affordable housing advocate says wherever possible, the city has a key decision to make.
How much land and stuff should we waste on what is essentially empty car storage versus providing housing for people who need it?
Councillor Anna Bailau says the city already pushes for less parking on a case-by-case basis.
Personally, I'm not a fan of above-ground parking spots. I always like to see them underground.
Which way the city goes could depend on how much people are driving or not. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
What's the secret to living till 103?
Not angry.
It's keeping a positive attitude.
Well, they've been on this planet longer than any of us, and now centenarians are also the fastest growing age group in the country. After the break, the secrets to a long life and the challenges facing an aging society.
We have what appears to be a woman who was on foot, possibly crossing the street, struck by an eastbound traveling motor vehicle on Dundas.
Well, a terrible scene in Regent Park this afternoon. A woman is dead and another person taken to hospital with serious injuries after a crash. It happened around 1 this afternoon. Police later tweeting that a man was arrested in connection with the crash on suspicion of impaired driving. Well, just hours before that collision, the mayor was holding a news conference about the next stage in his Vision Zero plan to reduce the number of pedestrian deaths on city streets.
The plan will move to lower speed limits on hundreds of kilometers of roads across the city. In fact, speed limits will be reduced on almost 50 specific bigger roads across the city. We simply have to see drivers slow down on streets where the numbers show us that speed has put people's lives at risk.
The mayor's plan calls for many roads to have speed limits reduced from 60 to 50 kilometers an hour. Tory says city staff have been taking a close look at pedestrian deaths since March. The recommendations still need to go before City Council. And Toronto police say they took in over 3,000 guns during their gun buyback program last month.
This is a great outlet for the public to get rid of unwanted guns that may pose a risk because they're improperly stored and otherwise neglected. They can fall into the wrong hands through theft and be sold on the street.
It is the largest number of firearms ever collected in this way in the city. Among the thousands of weapons turned in, 900 of them were handguns. Under the 3-week program, residents could call police to pick up a registered or unregistered gun from their home. In return, they got $200 for a long gun and $350 for a handgun. Those who took part did not face any charges. Well, most people only dream of living past the age of 100, but Stats Canada data shows that's becoming more and more of a reality here. Not only are there more centenarians alive now than ever before, their numbers are expected to skyrocket over the next 3 decades. Farah Morales sat down with some centenarians to learn their secrets.
Birthdays are a big deal at the Monchiang Home for the Aged.
You're so healthy and happy.
Especially when 2 people living here are turning 111. One of them is Phoon Hei Lam. Her granddaughter says she lived on her own in her 3-story home in Parkdale until she was 107.
And she'd just go up and down, like do her own thing on her own. Most days, like my father would come and bring her, at the end, my father would bring her her lunch and her dinner and check up on her, but you know, she was on her own. Yeah, took care of the house on her own, like washed her own floors, you know, bathed herself.
Lum is one of 14 people here over the age of 100, and according to Statistics Canada, that number shouldn't be surprising. Of all age groups, centenarians were the fastest growing between 2011 and 2016, up by more than 40%. As of 2016, there were more than 8,200 centenarians living in Canada, and by 2051, that number could increase 5-fold to reach 40,000.
Tell me what the wait list looks like to get into a facility like this.
The wait list has doubled. On an average, the wait time is 5 to 7 years. And in some situations, actually, they have to wait for over 12 years.
If our only solution to the aging of the population and frailty is nursing homes, we're never going to be able to manage them, and they're going to continually end up in hospital.
This public health physician says it's now time to think outside the box when it comes to solutions to elder care.
In Ontario, in Canada, we only provide the big resources, $3,000–4,000 a month, for older people who are in nursing homes. But if we could provide that to people who are at the same level of need for care, but give them community care, we in fact could keep them healthier, and they'd be much less likely to use the rest of the healthcare system, especially hospitals.
Phoon Hei Lam might just be living proof of staying healthy in the community. It wasn't until a few years ago that she even went to a hospital or even took medication. As for what keeps you going for more than 100 years, every centenarian here has a different formula.
She drinks a lot of water, good eating, active, and that gardening thing.
What's the secret to living till 103?
Keeping a positive attitude.
She says that one of the secrets to her longevity is dancing and exercising.
Farah Morales, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, there's another reason Raptors fans can feel good about the team's NBA championship. This year's playoff run also provided a major financial boost to a charity that helps young people get involved in sports. The MLSE Foundation runs the 50-50 draws at games. This year, people could buy tickets at the games as well as at home online. Well, that translated to nearly $3 million raised, and most of that money will go to introducing sports to underprivileged kids in the community. Shooting guard Danny Green was also out promoting his own basketball skills program today. He had a meet and greet with fans at Sport Check in Mississauga today.
Us being on that stage has allowed the people, not just locally but nationally, realize some of the things that we've done and do within our local communities and within our communities back home in our neighborhoods.
Green was there to promote his new basketball skills camp that he's hosting across Canada this summer. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Well, the Blue Jays won 7-5 tonight. The days of them being Canada's only Major League Baseball team may be numbered. The league will let Tampa Bay look at playing some of its home games in Montreal. Under the proposal, early season games would take place in Florida before the franchise's home games moved to Montreal for the remainder of the season. Baseball left Montreal back in 2005 when the Expos became the Nationals. Colette is back with her extended look at the forecast, and the first weekend of summer is looking pretty great.
It is looking pretty good. I can't say the temperatures are necessarily going to be record-breaking in terms of the heat. Look at the record for this date in history, almost 35 degrees back in 2012. But at least we're going to see some mild temperatures close to seasonal, maybe even a degree or two above. And as I've been talking about, some sunshine as well. We're getting into that into Friday, moving this precipitation out and the cloud deck out through the overnight hours. We're going to exchange air masses here. The next one that moves in with a little northwesterly flow, find that a little bit breezy at times, so the winds will be somewhat gusty. That potential into the afternoon hours, making it feel slightly cooler, but not bad. And then really into Saturday, that's where things start to warm up a little bit. Humidity should still be pretty comfortable. Even into Sunday, it just begins to build as we head towards the beginning of next week. Your temperatures for southwestern Ontario overnight tonight, lows again with this clearing trend of about 12 12 degrees because we'll get those clouds out of there a little sooner. And then tomorrow afternoon, 21 to 24 degrees. Northwesterly flow makes it a little bit cooler there towards Sarnia. Some of those winds at times coming in off the lake. Overnight tonight, though, we will get some improvement. The temperature's a little cooler where the clouds move out sooner. And then into tomorrow afternoon, there you go. A look at some of those readings. This time of year, we should be closer to 24, 25 degrees, around 24 for our seasonal highs. So I think no one's going to really be complaining about that. And we had a little humidity today, so it's going to feel good to have the air mass be a drier one with some lower dew points as well. So officially becomes summer, 11:54 a.m. We move into the first weekend of summer. So sunshine, Saturday's high around 24 degrees. Sunday, it looks like we'll climb a little bit warmer than that, so the high around 26. But I will tell you that as we get Sunday night into Monday, now that's a few days out, so the timing could be a little bit tricky here, but it seems like it could be as soon as overnight Sunday. The next system is going to move in here and bring in not only some rain showers, but we'll get into that risk of seeing some thunderstorm activity as we get into the afternoon hours, especially as the dew points rise and the humidity comes up a little bit. That air becomes a bit more buoyant, and so that's where we get into that chance of seeing some more active weather, and that sticks around into Tuesday as well. More summer-like, right, Mike?
Exactly. With humidity comes rain. Thanks a lot, Colette.
You're welcome.
Well, a Finnish inventor has sailed his floating hot tub on a raft to a neighboring country. He and a friend enjoyed the 10-hour trip in the comfort of their heated tub. The raft has solar panels and a barbecue. Unfortunately, though, they had to eat all their food cold when the barbecue washed overboard. The pair arrived safely, suffering only a sunburn and a salt water rash. Of course you get sunburnt in an outdoor hot tub.
I am Anna Maria Tremonti. We are before a live audience at the CBC in Toronto. This is a special edition and my last edition of The Current.
Well, after 17 seasons, CBC Radio's Anna Maria Tremonti signed off from The Current With a live show at the CBC Atrium this morning, there was music, special guests. That's The Voice right there, including Rick Mercer here, and a video message from the Bare Naked Ladies. Tremonti wrapped up the broadcast with a message for her listeners.
Because I know there are a whole lot of you who care about the detail, about the truth, about compassion, and about others. And that's why I say thank you for listening to The Current. And thank you for listening to me.
There's a nice send-off. Now, Tremonti isn't leaving the CBC. She is moving on to the world of podcasting. It's a nice farewell I listened to this morning. Good to hear from The Voice one last time as well. Well, that's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11 o'clock. Good night.